The free agency review episode of the Bears Talk Underground is brought to you by MyBookie. Guys, the Final Four is this weekend. 2 games on Saturday, the championship game on Monday, which means the time is running out for you to take advantage of one of the biggest betting weekends of the year. Now that Zion Williamson and Duke and that juggernaut team are out of it, who will reign supreme? Can Virginia overcome the shame of being the first number 1 seed, bounced in the first round by a 16 seed, and come all the way back for the ultimate triumph of hoisting the trophy on Monday night? If you think you know, you need to hit up MyBookie and place your bets. They have something for everyone, and MyBookie is the place to get in on the action. They've been in business for years, and their goal is to give you the best customer service in the business, and the best part is they pay out fast when you win. So bet with the best and then kick back and enjoy what's left of March Madness while you watch your picks cash in. Deposit with MyBookie today with promo code BEARS25 for a 50% sign-up bonus. That's promo code BEARS25. MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid, and let's get back to the business with our free agency review. New laptop, who dis? Larry D back. What's going on, everybody? The free agency review episode of the Bears Talk Underground. Did you miss me? It's been a couple of weeks, a little bit longer than I said it was going to be. I apologize for that. It's this weird thing that happens to me in the off season where I just it's funny. It's funny because I can't, for some reason, just make myself get to the computer and get started. But once I finally get there, all of a sudden, I'm ready to work. So here I am. I'm sitting. I'm in front of the laptop. The software's fired up. I'm recording, and we are back. So we have Erik Lambert from sportsmockery.com and NFLmocks.com. You can follow him at Erik Lambert1 on Twitter. That's where I found Erik, and I asked him to come on to the show and talk to us about the Jordan Howard trade. We'll be getting to that a little bit later on in the show. And, going to break down the free agency moves, the Bears, the additions, our subtractions, and what have you. We missed out on a couple of guys, or at least rumors would have you believe that we did, and some other little nuggets, and we'll get to those nuggets now. Why don't we? Today is it's Thursday, April the 4th, and of course that means since it's the beginning of April, we have gone through April Fools. And last week I saw a bone-chilling announcement made via Twitter, like through the beat writers. George McCaskey, the head honcho over there in Hallis Hall, said that the Bears would be releasing a new uniform for 2019, a commemorative uniform that the Bears were going to wear this season. And, of course, I immediately start to freak out, because I am a self-professed uniform snob. You guys know how I feel about uniforms, and, it's just from my life as an artist, a graphic designer. I've been drawing my whole life. These kind of things, just I pick up on this stuff, and it bugs me. It really does. And you guys know it is well documented how much I loathe the orange jerseys. I did see on Twitter today that they will be back in 2019, so just put a gun in my mouth right now. But the Bears are talking about an exciting uniform that they've been working on, that they were going to reveal to the world this week. And oddly, it showed up on April Fool's Day of all days. And it just so happened that it was an April Fool's joke. It turned out to be a ruse that the Bears decided to pull on the rest of the world. And it was kind of clever, I guess, that basically what the joke was that because it's the 100th season of Chicago Bear football, that everybody would be a 3-digit number this year. So like Mitch Trubisky was doing an interview wearing a jersey that said 110, and they showed pictures of Khalil Mack, Tariq Cohen, Akeem Hicks, all wearing 3-digit numbers, 196, 152, 129, and so on. So the Bears went through a lot of trouble for this. They released the video. It was about a minute or so long talking about it. George McCaskey was talking about how this is what they were going to do for the 100th season. Everybody was going to wear a 3-digit number. It took some convincing, but the league is going to allow it for this season, blah, 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 blah. Then a little bit later on in the day, about a 20-second video came out, and it was basically, it almost looked like an outtake. It was Mitch wrapping up the interview, and then as he's getting up off the chair, it's a shot from behind, and across the back of Mitch's jersey, it says April Fools. So there you go. It came out on April Fools, so you took it with a grain of salt, but you never know. And then they brought out the video, so it at the end with Mitch says April Fools across the back. So that is not the new uniform. However, the Bears did announce today that on June 7th, this big fan experience to commemorate the 100th season over the summer, they're going to have all kinds of Bears, future, past, present, and beyond show up to this event where they will be revealing a new uniform to be worn this year. So we're up to 4 uniforms, or 4 jerseys, if you will, that we're going to see in 2019. The regular navy, the regular white, the orange, and whatever they're going to unveil in 2 months' time at this big kickoff event on June the 7th. So prepare for me to be sweating bullets on June the 7th to see just what possible abomination could be taking place that we might have to watch the Bears wear a couple of times this year, and unfortunately probably have to watch them wear on Thursday, September the 5th, because since the last time that we talked, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if we talked about this last time, but since the last time we talked, the NFL has announced, it's not a rumor anymore, it is fact, the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers will kick off the 100th season of NFL football on Thursday night, September the 5th. So not the defending world champions raising the banner. The Patriots will do that on Sunday Night Football. The Bears and the Packers, the oldest rivalry in the NFL, the greatest rivalry in the NFL, will do battle at Soldier Field to kick off 2019 and the 100th season of NFL football. I am very excited about that. I will be either more or less excited about it once I see this uniform the Bears are going to most likely wear on opening night on September the 5th. But, we get to see our Bears up first. It's very exciting, and hopefully to do the opposite of what we did on our last week 1 kickoff against the Packers and come out on top. So, but here's to that. So very excited to see that the Bears and the Packers, that the NFL is going, making a turn here and not doing the defending champ thing, and doing something a little different to commemorate this very special season that we're all about to bear witness to in the 100th year with the Bears and the Packers setting things off. So very much looking forward to that and getting that Thursday night bye week thing out of the way, even though the Bears are still rumored to be playing Detroit on Thanksgiving. The rest of the NFL schedule comes out later this month. I think I saw a post on Twitter today. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, in case you hadn't noticed. I saw a post on Twitter today that said like the last 5 schedule release days have been like the 20th, the 21st, the 18th, and there was one that said the 14th. That was weird. But it's like out of the last 5 years, it's always like the 3rd week in April. So the 20th, the 21st, I think there was an 18th and a 19 in there. So a couple of weeks from today, I'm assuming, will be around the time that we can expect the schedule to come out, and that's when you can expect me to be back to review the schedule and what the rest of it may hold. We know one game for sure, its date, its time, its location, Bears-Packers week 1 at Soldier Field. We know at some point throughout the year the Bears are going to be on the road in London to take on the Oakland Raiders. They'll be the road team for that game. We know who they're playing, but for the rest of the games, we just don't know when. So we'll be finding that out a little bit later on this month, and that's when the itch really starts to set in. The free agency is done, and all of this preparation. The OTAs are going to start soon, and it's all very exciting. But it's still the off season, and there's still some free agency things happening from time to time, and all the rest of it. And then the schedule will come out, and then all of a sudden, 2019 season is real. We know when and where everything will be taking place. And that's when the itch really starts. That week before the draft, when the schedule comes out, then the draft happens. Then we go off a cliff for about 2.5 months. Well, we get OTAs here and there, maybe a free agency signing or a trade or something to fill the air. But for the most part, it's up to you and me to figure out how to fill the dead space from the end of April to the end of July, essentially, when training camp starts, before the season really gets rolling. But it's like when the schedule comes out, that's when it's like, is it September yet? You can just feel the hives breaking out. It's not football season yet. I don't know how much more of this I can handle. So, yeah, around that time, I'd say another 2 weeks or so, the schedule will be coming out. Also, we can expect, hopefully, I've reached out to him, our draft expert, our resident draft expert, Scott Wright from draftcountdown.com, hopefully having him back on the show to preview and review the draft. Should be an interesting conversation for us Bear fans this year, considering that we don't pick until 87 in the third round, thanks to the Khalil Mack and Anthony Miller trades this past season. So speaking of 87, it made me think about how we've been talking since last season about the Bears and the Rams having this kind of parallel to them. Well, here's a few more. I mean, and this is a crazy coincidence, and in a lot of ways, I hope this does repeat itself. Okay, so let's look at 2018, year two under a head coach, year one under a new head coach, a brand new offensive system with a second-year quarterback. That's exactly what the Rams were in 2017. First-year head coach, second-year quarterback. They had a great level of success. They went from worst to first, won their division, hosted a playoff game. The Bears went from worst to first, won their division, hosted a playoff game. Both teams, the Bears and the Rams, lost that home wild card game to the defending NFC champion. Now, granted, the Bears lost to the also Super Bowl champions, but last year, the LA Rams lost to the defending NFC champion Atlanta Falcons in the wild card round. So both made early exits, very close one-score games that came down to the wire, and both teams having their seasons caught short. Both teams the following season didn't have a first or a second round pick. The Rams traded their first round pick for Brandon Cooks, their second round pick for Marcus Peters to get him away from the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, the Bears traded their first rounder for Khalil Mack, their second rounder for Anthony Miller. And this is my favorite one. Both teams didn't have their first pick in the draft until 87 in the third round. I mean, if you line it all up, guys, if the Bears just keep following suit, we're going to the Super Bowl, baby. So hopefully we don't lose it the way the Rams did. But I'm liking our chances in 2019 if all this stuff keeps happening. I mean, it's just history repeating itself. No first or second round pick for the Bears, just like the Rams didn't have one. We're picking at 87. And, you know, if this follows suit, the Bears are going to win the division again. We're going to win the NFC and go to the Super Bowl. You know, I can dig it. I can definitely handle the Bears heading off to the Super Bowl, going to Miami, and trying to right the wrong that was Super Bowl 41. So, you know, the Rams were better in year two than they were in year one. Under McVay, they won more football games, which wasn't easy. They were 11-5 this year. They went 13-3. If the Bears went 13-3, that would still be an improvement on the 12-4 record that we had a year ago. And the Rams got a bye and that's what helped them succeed. Hopefully the Bears will be able to pull that off and avoid the wild card disappointment and get to the divisional round and kick some ass and head back to the Super Bowl. So just pointing that out. I got a weird mind and an eye for things like this, patterns and things like that, and that's just something that jumped out at me when I was looking at the further comparison between the Bears and the Rams and to see how well these stories line up. So anyway, let's move on. Let's get to the guts of it. Why we're here. We're here to talk about the Bears, our beloved Chicago Bears, and their offseason and what they've been up to. Now, considering everything that the Bears have done, the way that the season went, as good a football team as we had, despite our disappointing exit in the wild card round against the Eagles, there wasn't a lot that the Bears really needed to do. And granted, there's still a lot of time left in the offseason. There's moves still to be made. There's draft to go through, so on and so forth. The Bears aren't done making the moves that they're going to make. But up to this point, their big free agency splashes have all been made at this point. There's still some interesting names on the board, but most of the chess pieces that are going to be moved have made their move already. Like the Bears kind of held out, or at least Bear fans held out hope that we would add depth at the outside linebacker position by taking Justin Houston, who was released by the Kansas City Chiefs. He ends up signing with the Indianapolis Colts. There was rumor that the Bears might be in talks with Le'Veon Bell. Just before those rumors started, the Bears made some moves. They did some contract reshuffling, some contract restructuring. That's the word I'm looking for. Taking Khalil Mack's guarantee or his salary, something like that, to convert it into a signing bonus, which freed up cap space, like $11 or $12 million in cap space, and everyone thought that maybe that was money that was going to be set aside to try to sign Le'Veon Bell. He signs with the Jets. There was also rumor about Mark Ingram possibly joining the Bears, the running back for the New Orleans Saints. He ends up signing, I believe, with the Baltimore Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. So those interesting names did not come to Chicago. Here are the names that did. Let's start with the most recent signings. Patrick Scales, our long snapper. He is staying in Chicago, signed a 1-year deal to yesterday. Aaron Lynch, after making visits, I think, to Seattle, he also visited with the Colts as well. Re-signs with the Bears on a 1-year deal. Tyler Bray, our third-string quarterback, a 1-year deal. Pat O'Donnell, looks like we're not getting a new punter after all. 2 years, $4 million for Pat O'Donnell. Nick Williams, a defensive tackle, re-signs on a 1-year deal. Roy Robertson Harris, Isaiah Irving, Rashad Coward were all, like, I think, exclusive rights free agents or something of that nature. All signed 1-year tenders to return to Chicago, so all those guys are coming back. Ted Larson left the Bears. I forgot where it is that he went, but he's back on a 1-year deal. Ben Broniker, our reserve tight end, signs a 2-year deal to stay in Chicago. And let's see, am I forgetting anybody else? Okay, so those are the depth guys, the fillers, the roster fillers, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. Now on to the bigger names. Well, let's talk about some of the losses, and then we'll talk about who we replaced them with. Adrian Amos ended up not staying in Chicago. As a matter of fact, neither did Bryce Callahan. Both of those guys found new destinations. Adrian Amos headed to Green Bay to play for the Packers. It was a 4-year, like $37 million, so he'll be making $9 million a season. Good for him. Unfortunately, he'll be wearing the green and gold of the Green Bay Packers. So twice a year, I will not be rooting for him, obviously. And we replaced Adrian Amos with Clinton Dix, formerly of the Green Bay Packers, most recently of the Washington Redskins, a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. And there was a lot made about the fact that Clinton Dix made it a point to let everyone know that he had better offers from other teams, I guess more lucrative. He came to Chicago because he felt it was his best chance to win a championship. He wanted to be a part of the culture, and he gets to be backfield mates with his former college teammate, Eddie Jackson, who also went to the University of Alabama. So he wanted to be a part of it. When he talked to Eddie Jackson, Eddie sold him on the culture and the winning ways of the Chicago Bears, and he felt it was the best spot for him. So he signs a 1-year, $3.5 million deal to join our beloved Chicago Bears. Bryce Callahan ended up going to Denver. We all thought that's where Adrian Amos was going to go. Bryce Callahan instead follows Vic Fangio out to Denver on a 3-year deal, I believe. Something like $21 million, I believe, was the contract for him. Instead, the Bears went ahead and actually first they signed Buster Skrine as our new nickel corner from the New York Jets. 3 years, $16.5 million. So yet again, Ryan Pace getting a bargain on a player to fill the spot. They speak very highly of Buster, who was had a problem with penalties, but then again, he was playing for the Jets, so he probably had to bend the rules a little bit to even the playing field. But playing with a much better defense in Chicago, things might shore up a bit better for him. Cordarrelle Patterson, a 2-year deal from the New England Patriots, now comes to the Bears. 2 years, $10 million. And I just read an article today about Matt Nagy is, and I quote, a kid in the candy store with Cordarrelle Patterson, or Cordero as his name needs to be pronounced. We need to figure that. We need to get that right, guys. Cordero Patterson, formerly of the Vikings, the Raiders, and now the New England Patriots. Now he's a Chicago Bear, and I think that we just took care of our kick return problem. Not that it was a problem, but, you know, Josh Bellamy's not supposed to be returning kicks for us. He's not that guy. Speaking of Josh Bellamy, he left as well, also headed to the New York Jets. I think he signed a 2-year deal with them. Unfortunately, I really enjoyed the role that Bellamy was playing on the team this year. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure he was a very popular locker room guy. Also headed to the Jets, Daniel Brown, one of our reserve tight ends, following Bellamy over to the Jets, who came out with some new uniforms today. And the uniform snob in me, the uniforms themselves are not bad. You know, I like them actually. It's a little bit different. It's not as no Kelly green like they had before. It's a little bit. They call it Gotham green. That's what they're calling the color. And I don't mind that the Jets went back to the green helmets. What I didn't like was that they gave it like that chrome, that shiny finish. I probably would have gone with more of a matte, more of a flat finish than what they, that chrome. Not a fan. Maybe they'll change that, but nonetheless, uniforms, not bad. Not bad. So, who else did the Bears sign? Mike Davis, running back from the Seattle Seahawks, a 2-year deal. And then, we'll talk about this in depth a little bit more later on. Not long after that contract was signed, the Bears went ahead and pulled the trigger on the trade to send Jordan Howard to the Philadelphia Eagles. And like I said, we'll have Erik Lambert here in just a minute to talk about that trade and what it means to the Bears, what it means to the Eagles, how I felt about it, how Eric feels about it, and what we think it will mean to the team going forward. Let's see, am I forgetting anybody? The Bears signed Marvin Hall, a wide receiver from the Atlanta Falcons. Apparently, he is lightning in a bottle as far as his speed is concerned. He's also been kicking, returning kicks for the Falcons. So the Bears are going to have some options there with the speed. And let's see. I think that's everybody. As far as we high on Clinton Dix, Marvin Hall, Buster Skrine, Mike Davis, Cordero Patterson. Those were the big signings. Those were the big 5. We brought back Aaron Lynch. That was awesome to see him come back, because after I got over myself and stopped calling him Mr. Sandy Vagina, he actually did play for the Bears in the 13 games that he was healthy this season. He played very well, and I really liked what he did this season. Other losses for the Bears: we lost Bellamy to the Jets, Amos to the Packers, Kevin White. And I wish this guy all the best, man, because it's not like he was a buster of a player. He never found his way onto the field last year. I mean, obviously that doesn't speak well for him, but he signed a 1-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals, a new scenery, a new start, and I hope it works out for him. I really do. We don't play the Arizona Cardinals, so for all I care, he get 1,500 yards and 30 touchdowns this year. I really hope that things turn around for Kevin White. It just didn't happen for him in Chicago. Unfortunately, that does happen in the league from time to time. But, I think he can rest knowing that it wasn't because he was a lousy football player. He missed out on his chance just because, and to take a page out of our good old friend John Fox's book, the best kind of ability in the NFL is availability, and Kevin White was never available. So even when he was, Matt Nagy liked his other options more than him. So he's moved on. He's on to Arizona. He's a Cardinal now, and I hope things work out for him, man. I hope he, at the very least, has a decent career, and he can catch some passes and live his NFL dream. Other departures, offensive line depth. This is what made Ted Larson, the re-signing of Ted Larson, so important. We lost both Brian Witzman, who I did really want to have back, and Eric Kush, both signed with the Cleveland Browns. So heading off to the organization that is definitely trending up. That big trade for Odell Beckham Jr. really kind of lit up the NFL when it happened. And finally, other subtractions. Tight end Deion Sims was let go. Cody Parkey. I know everyone was shocked when Cody Parkey got let go. And Sam Acho. Also not happy to hear about Sam Acho being cut. But he was a salary cap casualty after missing 90% of the season last year with a torn pectoral muscle. So these free agent signings, I really like them, actually. The Buster Skrine one is the only one that I'm really worried about. Got a little sticky fingers when it comes to penalties and such. Clinton Dix, I'm liking what I'm hearing from him. He's playing on a much better defense than the ones that he's had a chance to play in. The Packer defense has been on decline the last few years, and then he was traded to the Redskins, also not a very good football team defensively last season. He's going to be surrounded by a plethora of talent on the defensive front with the Bears, and like I said, he also kind of has that instant camaraderie, that brotherhood with Eddie Jackson, who he shared the backfield with in Alabama. So I mean, those guys they know each other. Eddie Jackson is probably a very big reason why Clinton Dix signed with the Bears, and hopefully a year from now we're talking about, man, hopefully we can sign Clinton Dix and get him to come back after the year he had in 2019 for the defending Super Bowl champion Chicago Bears. Mike Davis, I don't really know much about him, so we're just going to have to wait and see with him. The word on him, though, is that basically he is a better version of Jordan Howard. He will be that kind of banger, that inside runner, but he's better catching passes out of the backfield, something that, Jordan Howard did not start off his career doing well, and then last year never really got a chance to do it. Whenever anything came out of the backfield, it usually went to Tariq Cohen. So we'll have to wait and see on Mike Davis. And we talked about Buster Skrine. Marvin Hall, I know absolutely nothing. I had never heard of Marvin Hall until we signed him. So obviously that's a wait and see kind of guy. But Cordero Patterson, I am very excited about him. I mean, look at the way that he was used in Minnesota. Look at the way that he was used from time to time in New England. I mean, there were times where he took handoffs as a running back out of the backfield. So, I mean, this is why Matt Nagy, when I read that article, and I believed it, Matt Nagy is like a kid at a candy store with Cordero Patterson because of this guy's versatility. Not only can he be an amazing game changer for us on special teams in the kick return game on kickoffs, but he can also be, he can be a receiver for us. He can be, he can run a reverse, that jet sweep that Nagy likes to run so much. Cordell Patterson is actually good at running the football out of the backfield, so he would be a perfect guy to run something like that with. So I'm very interested to see how the Bears are going to use him. After winning a Super Bowl in New England, he's coming to Chicago, hopefully to win another one, and I'm excited to see how the Bears are going to use him and how he fits into this offense. Another weapon for Mitch and company on the offensive side of the ball, and you can never have too many of those. So very excited about these guys. And it's a very low-key free agent class, no big splashes like we had a year ago. We signed Allen Robinson right off the jump, Trey Burton, Taylor Gabriel, spending that big money, adding those pieces. This wasn't that off-season. This was more about tweaking, adding depth in some positions. Like you heard me talk about all the guys we brought back: Nick Williams, Tyler Bray, Aaron Lynch, Roy Robertson-Harris, Isaiah Irving, Rashad Coward. These are all guys that are going to be backing up Khalil Mack and Kyle Long and Bobby Massey and things like that on the offensive line. These are all depth players. These are the ones that we needed to secure. It really wasn't the top. There wasn't really any starters that we had to replace aside from Amos and Callahan, who we replaced with Clinton Dix and Buster Skrine. The other 20 starters are already locked in. After we signed Bobby Massey, we re-signed him before free agency started. That locked up the entire offense. We're set. On offense, we sign Mike Davis. Then Jordan Howard becomes expendable. And then on the defensive side, 9 of our 11 starters were definitely coming back for 2019. And we replaced them with Clinton Dix and Buster Skrine. It was more about filling in that the other 2/3 of the roster with guys like Ted Larson and Isaiah Irving and Roy Robertson-Harris, and bringing those guys back to fill out the roster with some quality players. So, and I think the Bears have done that so far. Now we get to see Ryan Pace work his magic. And he gets to start in the rounds where he's done the best so far. He starts at 87 in the 3rd round. We got a 4th round pick. We got 5th rounders. So we'll see what he can do with only 5 picks this year, and see how that all works out for us. So those are the free agent signings. Those are the free agent acquisitions. Right now, what we're going to do is bring in our new friend Erik Lambert from SportsMockery.com and NFLMocks.com to talk about the Jordan Howard trade. And I recorded this a few days ago with Erik. I've been meaning to do this show all week long, but I've, like I said, hard to get motivated, and also didn't help that the changing in the seasons. I was a bit under the weather and didn't really feel like it, to be honest with you. But, stick around after the interview. Got another couple of things I want to talk about, and laying out what's ahead for the rest of the show. But without further ado, myself and Erik Lambert from SportsMockery.com talking about the Jordan Howard trade. And in the wake of the Jordan Howard trade, I thought it might be a good idea to bring somebody else on the show to kind of hash it out with me, whether he's in favor or against the trade, just to have another voice in here to talk about it. And I have a new voice on the show here to help us out with it. Erik Lambert, you can find him on SportsMockery.com and NFLMocks.com. You can also find him at Erik Lambert1 on Twitter. Erik, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
It's a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
So, Erik, let's talk about this trade, and it's felt like an inevitability since Matt Nagy was hired, because pretty much as soon as Nagy got hired, the rumors about Jordan Howard possibly not being a good fit, possibly somebody that the Bears might be looking to move. It sounded ludicrous a year ago at this time with. Not even everyone's thinking that hiring Nagy would be a blessing for Jordan Howard, considering that he was basically running into a brick wall of humanity because we had no passing game in the first 2 years of his existence. But 2018 proved that at the very least, Jordan Howard wasn't a back that Nagy at least liked to use very much, and it seemed like a more inevitable move as the 2018 season came to a close.
It's true. I think people got an education last season that not all backs are created equal, and that coaches more than ever before are looking for players who fit scheme. You know, you always like to find those guys who can fit any scheme, like a Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, one of those types. But by and large, more often you get guys like Jordan Howard who can be really good in one scheme, also a bad fit in another one. And some coaches try to adapt their scheme to a player, and sometimes it works, but more often than not, it doesn't. So, unfortunately, Matt Nagy got what he could out of Jordan Howard. He got over 900 yards. He got 9 touchdowns, and that's pretty good, but it's not the level of productivity you expect from Jordan Howard, who had over 1,000 yards his first 2 years. So it was clear that he wasn't quite comfortable in Nagy's scheme, and rather than try to continue to, force a square peg in a round hole, the Bears decided to send him to a team who might be a slightly better fit, who need running back help, and, got a draft pick for him, even though he's in the final year of his contract and he's coming off what would be considered a down year in terms of his regular production. So all in all, I understand why people are upset that Howard gone, because he was such a good player for 3 years. He was a warrior, and, people love that about him, a blue-collar type player who just fits this city. But at the end of the day, you have to understand it was a business decision. It was not personal, and the Bears are going to be better for it because they're going to start to put people that Matt Nagy wants into this system.
Yeah, especially with the signing of Mike Davis, who's apparently supposed to be better at the things that Jordan Howard has not displayed the best of, which is, more specifically catching the ball out of the backfield. And, there has been a lot of talk about, maybe the Bears didn't use Jordan Howard properly. Like, everyone's talking about how the Philadelphia Eagles run a similar RPO type offense. So how is it going to be better there? Well, Doug Peterson apparently likes to run a more of an inside zone type thing, the kind of moves that Howard did best with in 2016, 2017 when he ran for over 1,000 yards, and Nagy likes to go more outside with his backs. Do you think it was more about how he was being used, or do you think he just wasn't really much of a good fit for Nagy, period?
I think you actually got it reversed. Howard is an outside zone runner. He likes to get those stretch plays, examine where the blocks are going to be, and then just choose his hole from there. And it's his smooth but not necessarily fast run style, whereas Nagy, if you watched last year, he called a lot of inside zone, up the middle, between the guard type runs, and that's never been Howard's strength. Average, I believe, 3 yards last year doing that, and the year before, so it's never been his strength. While Mike Davis last year averaged 4 points between the guards, so that's been the strength of his ever since South Carolina. Understand why he interested the Bears, and getting him $3 million over the next 2 years, that's a pretty good deal if you're going to pair him with Cohen and what I believe will be a draft pick. So all in all, I think the Eagles probably run red zone. It's been sort of their MO with Doug Peterson, so I understand their interest there. I don't know if they're going to keep him long term. He feels at this time like a rental that they spent a round pick on. So, it's a good purchase for them, and the fact that the Bears get themselves another pick, be what looks like 10 picks next year, they've set themselves up pretty well, and I think they got a guy who better fits their system. I'm not going to say he's going to be a star, but I think he fits what they do, and they can get something out of him, and this is something that Nagy's done before with guys like Trick-Hendrick, Spencer Ware, so he's not intimidated by this. He believes that Davis can do some good things for them, and they still have Cohen, who's an explosive weapon, so I think they're going to be just fine, and I think how well in Philly.
Yeah, the only issue that I really had with the trade, I mean, considering that, like you said, it's been one of the worst kept secrets in the NFL that the Bears might be shopping him ever since Nagy was hired. My issue is more so that we traded him to the Eagles, A, because it's in the NFC, and B, because we play the Eagles this year. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of that, to have Jordan Howard averaging a yard and a half a carry for the first 8 games of the season. Then we play him week 9, and all of a sudden he's rattling off 8 yards a carry and runs for 250 on us or something like that. It's just something that kind of always happens to the Bears. So truthfully, that was really the only thing that I didn't like about the trade was not so much that we traded him. I really didn't even mind the compensation. I was more so having an issue of where we actually sent him.
And that's fair, because the Bears have been burned like that a few times in the past. Everyone remembers Cedric Benson leaving in free agency, going to the Bengals, and then burning them, them trading other players and whatnot. And I understand that. It kind of stings when that happens to them. But at the same time, I'm willing to bet that the Eagles made the best offer for Howard, and Ryan Pace had to be pragmatic. Yes, they're in the NFC. Yes, they're probably going to meet them in the playoff chase at some point because they're still a really good football team. But at the end of the day, you got to make the best business decision for your team. And he weighed the risks and said, this is probably the best we're going to get. So he took it. And, he's going to have to deal with the consequences one way or the other. So I understand people being nervous and upset about that. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to go through Philly regardless if Howard is there or not. So, send him there, get the draft pick, and just, weigh the results as they go.
Yeah. And you mentioned how the Bears are set up for next season. We still won't have a first-round pick thanks to the Khalil Mack trade. However, one of the genius parts of the Khalil Mack trade, besides actually getting Khalil Mack in the first place, was that the Bears, or Pace, I should say, also wrangled a second-round pick out of the Raiders. So we don't have a first, but we have 2 seconds. We have what possibly 2 fourths if for a compensatory pick for either Amos or Callahan, an extra 5th rounder that we're projected to get for Amos or Callahan. So I think that gives us 3 if the Howard pick becomes a 6th round. But overall, we 10 draft choices for next season, and a lot of them are like 4th, 5th, 6th round, and we know what Pace's batting average is with those picks thus far.
Absolutely. I mean, Pace has really set himself up well. I mean, the fact that he used the Khalil Mack trade to get basically the pick that he gave up for Anthony Miller back, that's absolutely stunning. I still can't believe that the Raiders agreed to do that, but the fact that Pace was able to pull it off only makes that trade look even better. The fact that a lot of people were worried coming into this draft, the Bears only have 5 picks, they don't have a first or second rounder, and they're sort of biting the bullet here because there's really not much else they can do in terms of acquiring more picks for this year. They're probably just going to have to deal with it and get the best they can. But the fact that Pace was able to set himself up next year, 10 picks, two in the second round, and then you sort of stockpile picks for the 4th and 5th, where he's done really well with Eddie Jackson, Tariq Cohen, Bilal Nichols, Jordan Howard. I mean, you feel really confident about what they can do in terms of building for the future while also competing in the present, and that's exactly what a good GM is supposed to do.
Yeah, I was when you kind of laid it all out there, because you wrote an article, I believe, yesterday on Sports Mockery about how Ryan Pace basically has a better plan in place than after his blockbuster trade to get Khalil Mack than Jerry Angelo did after his blockbuster to get Jay Cutler back in 2009. So, and when you laid it all out like that, Angelo really did kind of piss away the prime years for the Bears in, like 2009 and 2010 were okay seasons, but it's like when Cutler got hurt in 2011, after he got fired after that and everything, it just seemed like he did not have the same foundation for success that Pace seems to be setting himself up for.
Well, the thing about Angelo was making the trade for Cutler was the right idea. He was an upgrade in terms of talent at quarterback. He was a Pro Bowler, so you completely understood why he did it. The criticism wasn't with the trade itself. The criticism was with how reckless Angelo became with his remaining picks after the Cutler trade. People forget that he still had second-round picks in the 2009 and 2010 draft, so he still had an opportunity to get some really good young players from those drafts. But then he trades out of the second round in order to get an extra 4th-round pick in the 2009 draft. And that pick became Henry Melton, who became a pretty decent player, but then he got hurt, so he really didn't last long. And the other pick that they used as part of that trade was Jerron Gilbert, who was a complete, trash heap. He didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So, you give that up. That doesn't look like a good trade. And then the next year, you got that second-round pick, but you give it away before that draft even happens to get Gaines Adams from Tampa Bay, who played only a few games for the Bears before he unfortunately passed away because of a heart condition. So that's 2 picks you basically gave up for nothing, except Henry Melton, who became a decent player. But, that hardly makes up probably could have gotten had you just kept them. So giving away two such valuable picks and two what ended up being critical drafts for what was an aging team, that's basically the reason he probably ended up getting fired and why the Bears ended up so slow to fall downhill, because they couldn't replace their older veterans.
Yeah, that was it was a tough go there. As like 2012 was a decent season, or it started out really well. We started out 7-1, we go 3-5 down the stretch and missed the playoffs. We get rid of Lovey, and then the wheels really came off. We hired Trestman instead of Bruce Arians, and then John Fox was a failed experiment. But finally, we have Ryan Pace with the coach that he wanted, and we suffered through those first couple of years under Fox with a weak roster, and then Pace really turned on the Jets last year in free agency, and he's been hitting on his draft picks. He definitely seems to have a better plan in place to have the Bears succeed going forward.
And that's the thing, he's been very calculated and pragmatic about using his resources. Right times to spend a lot of money, going after players who are a little on the younger side, still career like Allen Robinson. He's a classic example, but he hasn't been afraid to be aggressive in the draft. He traded up for Leonard, traded up for Mitch Trubisky, traded back up for Anthony Miller. He's going after guys he feels can be long-term solutions, but at the same time, he's also picked certain drafts to add more. 2000, he had more than 7 picks. I believe last year he had more picks, and next year, despite only having this year, he's going to have 10 picks. So he's being able to stockpile resources for the future while also being aggressive for the present. And that's the sort of the balancing act you need to have as a GM in the NFL, and he's been doing it very well. Not just with the draft picks too, but he's also been careful with the spending in terms of salary cap space. He's always been flexibility while also being able to pay his players, Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, all his in-house players that he's been trying to keep. He's been doing it really well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that's going to unfold next offseason, especially because guys like Eddie Jackson and Tariq Cohen will be on the last year of their rookie deals, and will we be able to keep them happy so they don't hit the open market when their price tags will skyrocket, and we'll be able to keep them in a Bear uniform for the long term. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's all going to unfold. But any final thoughts on the Jordan Howard trade? Like, how did you feel about it personally?
From a fan perspective, I was upset only because I love Howard. I've felt, he's the quintessential Bear, and you just love seeing him every Sunday. He was one of my favorite players when the Bears drafted him. He just fit the city and the team so well. But the person who has followed the league for a long time soon came to understand why the Bears were doing it. As good as Howard has been, he's not what you'd call a quote-unquote special player in terms of his talent. He's not elite in that regard. He's just a good, solid football player. And as much as it pains the fan in me to say that you can't keep him, you understand the business perspective of it, that the Bears can still win without him. And it's hard to admit that, but it's also the truth, because this team was driven by good quarterback play and a great defense last year, and that's sort of where they're keeping their focus. They can always find more running back help elsewhere, and many times by this team alone, not just other teams. So the fan in me is upset, but also the business of the NFL points out that they can just fine without him.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much on the same boat with you. I'm not happy to see Jordan Howard go, but like I mentioned before, it was one of the worst kept secrets that the Bears might be thinking about moving him, and that he might not be the best fit. Like I said, a year ago, that sounded ludicrous. It's like, well, how do we know? We haven't seen him in the offense yet, and thinking that hiring Nagy with a more wide open offense would be to his great benefit, because he wouldn't be the only aspect of the offense that we have anymore, and that it would open things up for him, having a passing game to go along with him running the football. But in 2018, he wasn't the same running back. He wasn't able to be as productive as before. I saw a highlight reel of Jordan Howard's best runs that came out just after the trade and all of the ones that were selected for that particular clip. And I know that, he did have some decent runs in 2018, but all of the highlights in that clip were from 2016 and 2017 when he was over 1,000-yard rusher. So, I mean, that was just one thing that I noticed when I was looking at that. So, I too wasn't, not happy to see Jordan Howard go, but like you, I understand this was more likely to be an inevitability than anything, whether it be now or after the draft when they find somebody or draft someone in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of the draft. This was probably going to be happening no matter what.
Yeah, and it's just the state of the NFL, man. Everybody can be paid, not everybody can be kept, and Howard was unfortunately the man out. And I wish him well. I think he's going to do just well here, and if they don't end up keeping him, he'll sign a nice deal elsewhere and be a really good running back for somebody else. I think his career is going to continue to do well as it has up to this point. He's a good player, and he's going to have a good long career, and I wish him the absolute best.
Yeah, and I think you and I can both agree when we say we'll be rooting for him, except for those days when he happens to be playing our beloved Chicago Bears. So,
exactly.
Erik, thanks so much for taking out the time and for joining us on the show. We'll look forward to having you back on sometime here in the future. Erik Lambert, you can see him on sportsmockery.com, NFLmocks.com. You can find him at Erik Lambert1 on Twitter. Erik, thanks so much, man.
Absolute pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Erik Lambert, sportsmockery.com, NFLmocks.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at ErikLambert1 on Twitter, like I said. And I want to thank him for being on the show. Did so on short notice. I kind of, like I said at the beginning of the interview, just kind of wanted to have somebody else on the show to kind of bounce that off of. And I'd never spoken to Erik before, but I reached out to him. He got back to me, and like I said, only bing, bang, boom, about 15, 16 minutes. We talked about the Jordan Howard trade and basically how Ryan Pace is doing the opposite of what Jerry Angelo did after he made his blockbuster trade for Jay Cutler back in 2009, which today, it was either today or a day, or I think it was the second or something like that ended up being the 10-year anniversary of that trade. And looking back on it, would you consider it a success or a bad trade or anything like that? And I will absolutely concede that trade did not go the way that we wanted it to, but it did, in fact, do what it was intended, which was to solidify the quarterback position for the Bears for almost a decade. We got 8 seasons out of Cutler as our starting quarterback. For better, for worse, he was definitely better than just about every quarterback we had there before him since like Jim McMahon or anything like that. I mean, he was definitely. I'll always look back on the Cutler era as a what if kind of thing, because I'm pretty sure Erik and I touched on it. And ever since the anniversary came around, I've been listening to podcasts and reading articles, and the general consensus was Jay Cutler a franchise quarterback, or was he a carry the franchise on my back kind of guy? I think we can all agree that he wasn't, but I think that we can all agree that he was a good quarterback. He was a good quarterback. He had the tools and everything. He was a good teammate. Wasn't exactly, I think, built for the Chicago market, where he's going to be upfront and centered. He's not a face of the franchise kind of guy. His personality, it just doesn't suit his personality. And the biggest tragedy of it all is that we will often wonder what could have been when it comes to Jay Cutler, or at least I will, because we didn't do, when I say Jerry Angelo, and we talked about it with Erik, is that Angelo did not give Cutler the tools that he needed in order to succeed. When he joined the team in 2009, I think we were still looking at like Earl Bennett and Devin Hester being like 1 and 2 at wide receiver, and the 5th round pick that we got Like, we got Cutler and a 5th-round pick for those 2 first-rounders and a 3rd, and we also sent Kyle Orton to the Broncos. With that 5th-round pick, we drafted Johnny Knox, who was good for the Bears in his short period of time before he suffered that catastrophic back injury that ended his, that cut his career tragically short. But, it just, the funny thing is the Bears actually ended up winning the trade because we got Johnny Knox and Jay Cutler. The Broncos, on the other hand, got like one decent season out of Kyle Orton, and then the draft choices that they went with did nothing for them, which is why I laugh at the idea. We talked about this on the last show. I laugh at the idea of analytics and experts and stuff like that saying that the Raiders won the Khalil Mack trade. There is no way you can say that now. There is no way you can say that now. With the way that Khalil Mack popped last year with the Bears, and these picks that the Bears gave the Raiders are going to have to do a hell of a lot better than the picks we gave the Broncos worked out for them in order for it to look like. Because we got a perennial Pro Bowler, a future Hall of Famer, a once-in-a-lifetime talent. The Raiders are going to have to get at least 2 of those with these picks for it to look like they ended up winning the trade. So I laugh at the idea that you can say now for certain the Raiders are on the top half of that trade. There's no way. And looking back on it, despite it not going the way that we would have wanted it to, the Bears won that trade because the Broncos got nothing out of the picks that they got from us. And the Bears got 8 years of service and a good wide receiver in Johnny Knox in return on that trade. So I think the Bears won the trade. And like I said, I'll always play the what-if game when it comes to Jay because it wasn't until year 5 in 2013 that we started surrounding him with tools. With Alshon Jeffrey, went out and got Brandon Marshall. We signed Martellus Bennett, put a better offensive line in front of him. And just when the Bears finally did that, Urlacher retired, Peppers, it was like the defense just got old all of a sudden, and they started getting hurt. Peppers didn't have a good year in 2013. Henry Melton went down for the season with a knee injury week 3 in the season. Peanut Tillman was banged up, missed a lot of time with that tricep injury, ended up having to go on IR for that. Lance Briggs missed some games with like groin injuries and stuff like that. All of a sudden the defense got old literally overnight, and we went from having like a top 5 unit in 2012 to having a bottom 5 unit in 2013, which just completely offset the fact that we had a top 5 offense in 2013, and we've been doomed ever since. So finally rebounding now with Ryan Pace and the football team that he is putting together, and like we talked about with Eric, setting himself to maintain this level of greatness. We got 10 picks in next year's draft in 2020, including 2 second-rounders. So, I mean, it's Ryan Pace is doing just fine right now with what he's doing with this football team. But like I said, with Jay Cutler, it was too little too late. Once we finally got an offense put together for him, we had no defense. When for the first 5 years that we had him, it was all defense, and whatever we could, we threw it out there on offense and had very little success. And his favorite weapon, we just happened to trade away to Carolina for a 3rd-round pick. So, and of course I'm talking about Greg Olsen, the one guy he liked throwing the football to, and could have been a hell of a football player for the Bears. Ended up getting shipped off because Mike Martz doesn't use tight ends. That's why I made that trade. Not because Greg Olsen wasn't productive or anything. Mike Martz doesn't use tight ends, and the Bears didn't want to have to pay him what he was going to require in his second contract. So, yeah, that's why Jerry Angelo got fired, for doing stupid things like that. So, yeah, disaster is what that guy ended up being. So, I'll always look back on the Jay Cutler era, I should say, with bittersweet thoughts about, we had a good quarterback, but he wasn't so good that he could transcend. He wasn't Aaron Rodgers, where Aaron Rodgers could take the team on his back and, mush, we're going forward. Here we go. You guys follow me. And Jay Cutler was more of a piece. And, he was a guy that played well when he had talent around him. You see in 2013, we had one of the best offenses in football. And, you saw what he could do when he had the talent around him. But we didn't have it around him long enough, and then things went sideways, and unfortunately it just did not work with Jay Cutler. So anyway, I think that's going to do it for this episode, the free agency review. Now, what we have coming up, I talked about it briefly at the start of the show. We got the draft preview coming up. We got the draft review coming up. We got the schedule release show coming up as well. And then after the draft, we're going to take a little bit of a break. And then comes that part. You guys like to fight with me about it because, I've gotten some feedback on it. You guys like the episode. You don't. You love them. You hate them. It's my favorite part of the year outside of the actual season itself. And I'm talking, of course, about the opponent preview episodes. Now, we usually start around Memorial Day, the end of May, and then we just dig in and start talking to people until right around training, about a week or two before training camp starts. We take one little last hiatus before training camp starts, and then we're balls to the wall until the end of January, hopefully into February this year. But that's all coming, and we've got some really, really interesting opponents this season. I mean, we're playing first place teams, so we got the Rams and the Saints. Those are our same place opponents as opposed to the bottom dwelling Buccaneers and Giants from last season. We got first place Rams and Saints. Those are our same place opponents this season. We got the AFC West, a crazy interesting division to talk about. We're going to talk to somebody from the Raiders. I can't wait to do that. We talk to somebody from the Chiefs, talk about Mahomes and what could have been had they played defense in the AFC Championship game. It could have been them hoisting the trophy against the Rams in the Super Bowl. But unfortunately, that didn't work out. Obviously, it's going to be an interesting conversation when we talk about the Broncos with Vic Fangio going over there and what could be the Joe Flacco trade and whatnot going to Denver. And then, of course, the LA Chargers and Phillip Rivers and what they were able to do last season and everything else. So, I mean, that is a crazy interesting division. And, of course, we have the NFC East with the Cowboys, the Redskins, the Eagles, the new home of Jordan Howard, and once again, the New York Giants. And then, of course, our division opponents in the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings. Lots to talk about there as well because we came and stole the division from everybody. The Bears weren't supposed to do that last season. We may have been knocking on some doors last season, but nobody expected us to come away and win the damn thing. So lots to look forward to as far as those opponent previews. I quite frankly can't wait for those to, like I talked about at the beginning of the show, where I have a hard time finding motivation to get ready to do these shows in this dead period of the season. I come back for one show, I'm gone for a couple of weeks, going to do another show, maybe gone for a little while. When those opponent preview episodes get started, I'm banging out like 3 episodes every 5 or 6 days or something like that. I mean, I'm working nose to the grindstone. I really love that time of year. I'm talking to new people and making new contacts and all that kind of stuff, and it's one of those things that I love so much, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. Really looking forward to that. Now, speaking of episodes, hopefully you guys are still with me here as we're getting ready to wrap up. If you liked the Kyle Brandt episode, the interview, got a lot of great feedback on that, had a lot of fun talking to Kyle. Hopefully I'll be able to reconnect with him, see if maybe I can use this networking to my advantage, and see if maybe somebody else can come on the show thanks to Kyle, much like I got to Kyle through Jeff Pearlman, who we had on the show for the USFL book back in October, reaching out to people like Emery Moorhead and getting him to come on the show and regale us about the days with the 85 Bears and playing with Sweetness and under Mike Ditka and, practicing against the 46 defense and Buddy Ryan. That was some good stuff. Really enjoyed that conversation as well. If you like these interviews, you like me doing shows like that, how about you guys help me? Help me out. If there's somebody that you want me to have on the show, let's hit them up on Twitter. To steal a page out of the guys from Bears Barroom, I think this is basically how they did it. They reached out to their audience and told them, basically, tell this guy he needs to be on the show. Let's do that. I'm pretty sure that's how they got Akeem Hicks and Kyle Long on the show last year. I think they had Yoel Iwe-Buniwe on the show as well. I think they even talked to Adrian Amos, the lucky bastards. I don't know how they do that. So that's from my things, my interactions on Twitter, that's what I'm seeing, is that they're reaching out and finally, I guess they're kind of giving in. My top 2 targets, Akeem Hicks, Anthony Miller. So get on Twitter, find those guys, tell them they need to be on the show and come talk to me so that we can, we can hit them up. Follow me on Twitter, at BTU_Larry on Twitter. Tell them that they need to come talk to me, be on the show. I'll retweet it. Let's get it going. Let's get a groundswell going. This is a call to action, guys. Help me out. Let's see if we can't get one of our Chicago Bears on the show before the season gets started. I would love to talk to Anthony Miller. I would love to talk to Akeem Hicks or anybody you guys think that we should have on the show, man. I just love being able to do these interviews and getting up close and personal with these guys. Like I said, I had so much fun talking to Kyle Brandt. I had so much fun talking to Emery Moorhead, and even in Jeff Pearlman and talking about that book with the USFL. I'd really love to keep doing interviews like that. So help me out. If there's somebody that you think that I should have on the show, reach out to them on Twitter. And, make sure to tag me in it. It's BTU_Larry, and I'll make sure to retweet it and reach out to the player myself and see what we can do. Let's work together and see if we can't get some cool people on the show. So anyway, that is going to do it for the free agency review episode of the Bears Talk Underground. And I will be back in short order, hopefully not too much later. Like I said, I reached out to Scott Wright, our good friend from draftcountdown.com. He is our draft expert here at the Bears Talk Underground. Hope to have him back soon to help us dig into this draft, because we got to dig deep. Our first pick isn't until 87. How many, I don't know 87 players who are going into the draft this year. To tell you the truth, since the Bears don't have a top 10 pick for the first time in how many years, I haven't really even been paying attention to mock drafts and who's going where, because the Bears aren't picking. So I haven't really been paying attention. Scott Wright will enlighten us all, hopefully, when we have him back on the show. And then, like I said, shortly after that, we should be talking about the schedule release and when and where the Bears will be playing their 2019 schedule, the road to Miami, and Super Bowl 54. Wow. Man. Anyway, so that is going to do it for me. Reach out to the players on Twitter. Make sure to tag me. Let's get a groundswell going. Get some of these guys on the show. I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks when we do the draft preview. Until then, my name is Larry D, and this has been the Bears Talk Underground.